Hello and welcome to this Tuesday's morning market briefing. We've got lots to talk about, but firstly, Israel and Hamas truce extended by 2 days, says Qatar, as well as that Tesla wins interim decision against Swedish state over car number plates. But we've got lots to talk about on the charts, also with lots happening on the economic calendar. We'll come to that near the end, so make sure you stay around to see that. Before we get straight into it, make sure to subscribe. The first article to talk about, of course, is Qatar in relation to Israel and Hamas. Now, Qatar said on Monday mediators had secured a deal to prolong the temporary truce, this being between Israel and Hamas, for another 2 days to allow more hostages to be released from Gaza. Now, this is a topic that we've been covering actively as it does develop, covering it since the start of the war did begin, where we did see, that massacre by Hamas, where they did storm the territories of Israel, massacre over 1,000 civilians and take 240 hostage. And from that, we've now seen Israel invade into Gaza as its territory, in a process to eradicate Hamas from the territory of Gaza. But now we have seen that truce take place temporarily, that ceasefire begin to enable, hostages to be exchanged but for prisoners. Now, these hostages were those taken on October the 7th, and the hostages being exchanged are only women and children for the moment, with the prisoners being released from Israel also only being women and children at the moment as well. So as a result, we are seeing kind of this trade of individuals take place, and now it does seem that this extension, this period of a ceasefire and exchange of hostages will be extended by 2 days. As so far we have seen this exchange take place with very little kind of mishaps. Now, this announcement on extending the 4-day pause following mounting pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to provide more time for hostages to be freed. And this also, preceded the initial truce that we were talking about, where, Benjamin Netanyahu, despite leading Israel, despite being a very pro-Israel figure, was actually being critiqued more so by the centrists and more left-wing types within Israel. Everyone within Israel is largely pro-Israel. However, there are many individuals which still disagree with Benjamin Netanyahu's government. And, it does seem that Benjamin Netanyahu was approaching this issue of conflict and hostage-taking with a more military approach. However, many civilians were just calling for these hostages by any means necessary to be released. In relation to these hostages being returned home, many families were affected by the October the 7th attack, and so many feel a personal relation to the hostages and want them home, of course. And it's many hostages that were taken. So as a result, Benjamin Netanyahu has been receiving that pressure to release those hostages, and now we did enter that ceasefire as a result, and now it may be extended further as a result of that continuing pressure for hostages to be released rather than military action taking place. Now, Hamas has not confirmed the agreement. Hamas has confirmed the agreement, but Israel has not yet commented on the deal. So we can't yet say, for sure, Israel is in on this, because Israel hasn't said themselves. However, Qatar, the key broker within the relations and negotiations so far, is saying that Israel and Hamas have agreed to this truce. So it does seem to be true, of course. Now, the number of hostages to be released has not been said yet, but is assumed to be. Is assumed to be around 20 Israeli women and children, as this is what was previously said by Hamas. As we did enter the first truce, we did hear from Hamas that if it was extended 2 days further, Israel would receive 20 more hostages. But we have already heard concerns, as I did talk about yesterday, in relation to Hamas actually being able to find these hostages. After Hamas did breach the kind of wall, the fence, to Israel, and stormed those territories and took those hostages, the number of individuals that were taken did amount to around 240. However, the number that Hamas individually did take seems to only be within the 50 to 100 mark, as there are many other Islamic militant groups within the territories of Gaza, such as another key group. I don't have it written down here, but they are believed to be holding the next set of hostages, which will now be released. And therefore, it's also suspected that many of these individuals which are being held are also being held by civilians and gangs who are looking for, their own personal purposes to hold these hostages, or even for criminal activities in an exchange for money, but especially in relation to these gangs. And so this is something to take note of, as well as it may become an even bigger issue for Hamas and Israel in these exchanges if these hostages are being held by people which aren't related to Hamas directly, with Israel in return promising to free another 60 Palestinian prisoners. And this has been the ratio so far. For every one Israeli hostage, 3 Palestinian prisoners have been returned. In the original ceasefire, though, 50 Israelis had been released, following 240, as I said, being taken hostage, with the US welcoming the extension, saying it would like to see it extended further, and the pausing of fighting and the release of hostages has also seen an increase in humanitarian aid into Gaza, as we spoke about yesterday, with that increasing flow of aid into Gaza. And despite rumours that Hamas has no more than 50 women and children as hostage for release, an official briefed on the negotiations said Hamas is confident of 20 hostages still being available for transfer. So that's important to note, of course, with many of the hostages being released so far also being of foreign nationality. So that was a big thing for many other governments, such as France and Germany, which did have many civilians being held hostage in the territory of Gaza, with the release of hostages so far raising the mood and morale of the Israeli nation as a whole. So keep your eyes on this, as it will be affecting markets around the world, and the possibility of a regional conflict is always there, and this will be highly impactful to markets, of course. So keep your eyes on that. But next to talk about is Tesla, which has won the interim decision against the Swedish state over car number plates. Now, Elon Musk scored an initial win in his labour conflict with Swedish authorities, and this comes as Tesla obtained an interim court judgment on Monday, forcing the state to deliver registration plates for his new cars. Now, this is a topic that we also covered last week in some depth, and made sure that we were able to kind of understand, as this was an issue which was pressing Elon Musk greatly, with Elon Musk having some very vocal responses to it. So, Tesla, an American brand, obviously coming over into Europe, which has much stronger labour laws as well as union relations, does cause some issues, especially in relation to car making, of course. With this being something that we've seen over the years in relation to, these strong unions within, especially Scandinavian countries, as we're talking about here, putting enough pressure on these large car makers to prevent them from actually expanding their usual process of manufacturing to these nations, and forcing them to adopt their more collective bargaining approach. But it does seem that Tesla really wants to avoid this. Now, Tesla filed twin lawsuits against the Swedish Transport Agency and National Post Service over their refusal to deliver number plates for their cars. Now, this came as postal workers striked in sympathy among Tesla's mechanics in Sweden. So, we are seeing these solidarity strikes. So it's not even necessarily talking about this specific group. We're also talking about these groups being related and, sympathizing for one another. But the ruling does mean that Tesla can now collect plates directly from its offices within the next 7 days. So that's a big result for Elon Musk, with Musk claiming the strike of blocking the delivery of registration licenses insane. And this is what we covered last week, as this being some very, important rhetoric to note down in relation to Tesla's stock. Now, the lawsuit filed by, I can't really pronounce the name, but Norrköping District Court on Monday demanded that the registration plates for the vehicles that Tesla owns come into Tesla's possession. Now, the strike began with 130 mechanics in Sweden belonging to the IF Metal Union, who went on strike last month following Tesla's rejection of their request for collective bargaining. And Musk is a staunch critic of unionization, avoiding collective bargaining worldwide so far, which is a crazy achievement for business, of course, with Tesla having no manufacturing in Sweden, but the strike is starting to have an impact after a factory that manufactures parts for its cars stopped production on Friday in support of the strike. So this is something to keep your eyes on in relation to, of course, Tesla's stock. So keep your eyes on this article. But next to talk about is the charts, with the first asset to talk about, of course, being US indices. Now, the US 30, as we have up here, is representing that decline of momentum to the upside that we have been noting most recently. So, although the US indices have been pushing to the upside since around the start of November, there's been periods at which, US indices have kind of slowed in momentum, but overall we have had that overall bullish momentum. But most recently, you could say around beginning mid-November, so around the 15th of November, we have continued to trend to the upside, but in a very kind of consolidation kind of fashion, not much momentum to the upside. And we can see this here with price coming now into contact with this strong area of liquidity and resistance that we had noted before, and now kind of completely halting in its movement to the upside. And why might that be? Well, we are also seeing this bearish divergence on the charts. This was something that we highlighted as a potential reversal signal for the US 30 as well. So keep your eyes on US 30 as it comes into contact with this area of liquidity, has that bearish divergence and therefore has that chance of a reversal. So keep your eyes on that. Next to talk about though is the dollar, which now is continuing to push to the downside, but is coming into contact with these lows, most recent lows. So keep your eyes on whether dollar can make a break to the downside further, as we did see the dollar break out of this kind of bearish flag, where price had come into contact with that Fibonacci level. So keep your eyes on whether price can push lower still. Next to talk about is Euro USD, which, like the dollar pushing to the downside, Euro USD is trying to push to the upside, and so Euro USD is now very much nearing this high and could be preparing to break out to the upside. So keep your eyes on this. If Euro USD does break above, then we could be looking at price run all the way up to the 27.20 level. But that said, previously we have seen this bearish divergence also form, and so we did kind of take note of the possibility of a bearish reversal on Euro USD. So keep your eyes on this. Next to talk about though is pound yen, which has had that very, very, very strong bullish momentum for some time now, but as we noted yesterday, was experiencing that bearish divergence, with price pushing above its previous and most recent highs, making new highs around the 188.65 level, but has seemingly kind of taken a small reversal from that level. Now the question is this just a retracement before continuation to the upside, or in fact are we seeing a complete reversal of pound yen? That's for you to decide. However, in line with this bearish divergence, I would say keep your eyes out for a potential reversal. But overall, we have been seeing that pound strength for some time now. As you can see here, starting from this liquidity spike around the 3rd of October, we've just seen this overwhelming momentum to the upside. So keep your eyes on this. Next to talk about is Bitcoin, which hasn't actually been doing too much recently, with that great amount of volatility that we've been seeing recently being triggered by speculation around the SEC in relation to the establishment of an ETF Bitcoin a Bitcoin ETF basically. But like many other assets, we are experiencing that bearish divergence at the moment, and Bitcoin is continuing to range within this area between the 38,000 level and 3,600 level, and we haven't really seen a significant move to the upside or downside of those two levels, and therefore, you know, it's hard to say where Bitcoin can go from here. So that's just something to note on Bitcoin. Next to talk about though is gold, which has now broken above its recent highs and broken above this strong area of resistance which was holding gold down for some time now, and therefore, you know, we have great opportunities on gold in relation to seeing how far gold could now go. The next area of possible, you know, consolidation or issues for the charts gold is near, though, still, you know, wherever you go on gold, there's an area of resistance, and, you know, we're kind of coming into contact with that. Now, I wouldn't say this is the strongest area of resistance. I just wanted to note, you know, make note of for you guys, you know, an area which, you know, we're not out of the woods yet for gold to the upside, and gold is now coming into contact with, once again, another key kind of psychological level of 2020 for price. So keep your eyes on that, of course. Next talk about though, and lastly on the charts, is Brent crude oil, which is now sitting just above the $80 a barrel mark. It did peak below it yesterday. It did break below it, yesterday. But we are sitting on that level now and sitting on that short-term bullish trend line. So keep your eyes on this to see where price could now go. If it does break below, we could see a serious run to the downside. But, you know, that said, oil has been struggling to break below that $80 a barrel psychological level, so keep your eyes on that. Lastly to talk about though is the economic calendar. We have, you know, some data coming out today, but not too much. Now, firstly, we will have Australian retail sales coming out, as well as that we do have German and French consumer confidence figures being released, as well as that we will have, you know, the US house price index and their data being released along with that, as well as US consumer confidence figures being released, as well as numerous Fed official speeches. We will also have the ECB President Lagarde speaking as well today. That's another important one to keep your, you know, eyes on and, you know, listen out for. She shapes the ECB's monetary policy, so listening out for that's always important. So as that we will have a Bank of England's official speaking as well today. But that's all to talk about on the articles. We've covered a lot on the articles. That's all to talk about on the charts. We've covered a lot on the charts, and that's all to cover on the economic calendar as well. Hope you have a great trading day this Tuesday. But that's all from us at Wildwood Capital. Have a great one. See you later. Bye.